everyone's in this hotel right in the middle of all of these megalithic ruins all around us, including Pumapunku and the rest of the temple here in Tiwanaku. We're literally right in the middle of this situation, and it's nighttime, and there's nobody in this hotel except for us. It's just a really bizarre feeling knowing that at some time in the distant past, this whole valley, this whole Altiplano area here in Bolivia was full of activity, and that these megalithic structures were fully built, and who knows what was going on here. Something very strange was definitely going on. Tiwanaku is a confusing place. There are a number of different archaeological sites within the area surrounding the town of Tiwanaku, which derives its name from the Spanish rendition of the word Tiwanaku. To the east of the town of Tiwanaku, you have the temple of Kalasasaya, the subterranean temple, and the Akapana pyramid complex, among other ruins. To the south, less than a mile away, are the remains of Pumapunku. What makes Tiwanaku so confusing and even misleading is the fact that the ruins dispersed across the land belong to at least two separate cultures from vastly different time periods. The megalithic remains of a highly advanced antediluvian race are buried 6 feet beneath the sediment deposited by the Great Flood, as Arthur Poznański confirmed. But because other native peoples inhabited the area long after the antediluvian civilization was destroyed, the remains of their cultures are also present. Here at the Tiwanaku site in Bolivia, we have different kinds of constructions. We have constructions that are very old, pre-flood constructions, and then we have what I consider to be post-flood constructions that are of inferior technology. But the thing is that it's all kind of mixed together in this one area, and so you have to really be able to tell the difference between what would be the more advanced technology compared to the newer, less advanced technology. It's all mixed together here. Many of the most impressive artifacts that once stood in Tiwanaku have been plundered over the centuries by looters looking for treasure and locals looking for building materials. To make matters worse, the Bolivian army once used what little remained as target practice for their artillery. Then, in the 1950s, a nationalist Bolivian regime attempted to reassemble all of the pieces in order to promote tourism and national pride. The reconstruction was executed with haste and blatant disregard for historical accuracy. Instead, much of what now stands has been completely fabricated with modern building materials and glued together with cement. Many of the artifacts that belong to the technologically advanced antediluvian race, such as the famous Gate of the Sun and the monoliths made of pure andesite, have been moved from where they were originally discovered and intentionally placed within the new constructions to give the impression that one great pre-Inca Bronze Age level civilization built everything between 530 and 600 AD. Basically, the Bolivian government wanted Tiwanaku to be their version of Peru's Machu Picchu. Added to all of this confusion is the ever-present conspiracy to cover up the evidence of the highly advanced non-human races that existed in the world before the flood of Noah. Tiwanaku, like most of the major antediluvian archaeological sites around the globe, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. UNESCO is an acronym for United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. People have to understand that the narrative of history is carefully controlled and to a degree contrived to promote a Darwinian paradigm, and more importantly, to conceal the biblical reality of the world before the flood of Noah, when the hybrid offspring of the fallen angels walked the earth. The technology of these fallen entities and the knowledge they possessed is voraciously coveted by the secret societies and intelligence agencies operating in the shadows all around the world, and quickly confiscated wherever and whenever it is found.
Everywhere we go around the world, where our research leads us in looking for the evidence of giants, we run into the same cover-up. Not just the existence of giants, but of the pre-flood world in general. There is a concerted effort to hide the fact that there were highly advanced civilizations living in the dateless past. Not only do archaeologists deny this fact, but some of them have actually been caught staging artifacts to mislead the public.
It seems like they're purposely mixing in some of the stones and artifacts from Pumapunku and just distributing them all around this area. The Inca, the conquistadors, and many of the chroniclers believed that Tiwanaku was built by a race of ancient giants before the flood. Not only did they believe that Tiwanaku was built by giants, but it was also commonly accepted that the huge monoliths discovered there were fashioned in the likeness and stature of their builders, who were not at all like the natives that inhabited the land after the flood. The fact that the giants sculpted colossal statues in their own likeness and stature was well known in the ancient world and was certainly part of Inca lore. Something that we notice when you get up close here is that this monolith, whoever this represents, is bearded. He has a beard and a mustache, which is, of course, not common for the native peoples around here. So, on the side of this monolith with the beard and mustache, we have this serpent carved into the side, which it could be indicative of the plumed serpent deities, the plumed serpent godmen that were said to have brought the civilization and taught the native peoples here in South America. There's a very interesting story related to Tiwanaku that is cited as fact by the famous chronicler and historian Bernabe Cobo in his History of the New World, published in 1653. The story concerns the first Spanish viceroy of Tiwanaku, named Captain Juan de Vargas. According to Cobo, Captain Vargas was confronted by a very strange individual who gave him an ancient map depicting the city of Tiwanaku before it was destroyed. The map showed the arrangements of all the buildings and the exact location of great treasures buried beneath them. Cobo relates in great detail what Vargas discovered when he began to dig. He began to dig in the areas among the buildings, according to what that man, or demon, for so he believed him to be, had related to him. And by the signs and signals he had presented to him, he discovered exactly what the map had accurately indicated. At first, he removed many jars full of very fine clothes made of maguey, silver vases and pitchers, a great quantity of beads and cinnabar. He unearthed a skeleton or corpse of a giant human body. And continuing in his discoveries, very pleased as he came upon every signal he had remembered, one day he found a very large human head made of gold, whose face was very similar to the idols of stone mentioned earlier. He did not dig for the pleasure of it, but was driven by greed to find even greater wealth. But it didn't last long, because the next night, death overtook him, even though he had went to bed without any ailment. This incident caused much fear and snuffed out the greed of those who would have continued to dig in search of the treasures that they supposed were buried among the mentioned buildings. After a while, the authorities were really getting irritated with us.
Listen, they're on to us now. They're on to us now.
But let's walk around.
I think because you got to remember, a lot of these people speak English, and they know what we're saying.
Yeah.
So we got to get our footage and get the hell out of here.
All of the guards seemed to be dialed in on us, and they were even pulling out these little phones they had attached to their belt buckles, pulling them out and trying to take covert pictures of us and then slipping them back in their pockets.
She just took out a little camera and took a picture of us.
I know, I saw.
You see it?
Mm-hmm. Obviously, we were getting concerned that our footage was going to get confiscated, or worse, we were going to get thrown into some Bolivian jail.
Yeah, I think we've pushed the envelope as far as we should today. I think we need to just wrap it up and get out of here.
Time we were in Bolivia, we were under surveillance. It was a relief to finally walk across that bridge and re-enter Peru with all of our camera gear and footage still in our possession. Our next objective is to go and film at the alleged Stargate of Aramumuru. Our hope is to be able to talk to some of the older villagers and get their testimonies, get some of their stories, perhaps some of the legends surrounding the area, and then to camp out in front of the actual site and see what happens.
Aramumuru is located near the town of Huli, in an area known as the Valley of the Spirits. No one knows who carved the gate-like design into the rock, but most archaeologists agree it was definitely pre-Inca.
at our destination, we were immediately met by an elderly Aymara woman from the nearby village who was heading out to cultivate in her chakra. I took the opportunity to interview her and see if she could tell us anything relating to the claim that Aramumuru is a stargate or a dimensional portal of some kind.
¿Qué sabe ella de la puerta de Aramumuru?
Umayatati uka akstoka uka Aramumuru ka punko. Kuna historia en Kisoka. Dice que ella no sabe, que el vigilante sabe qué cosa es el... ¿Para qué es? Sí, dice que hay un brujo que vive allá atrás, dice. Ese brujo también sabe la historia de este lugar de Aramumuru.
Ella ha visto una vez que se abre la puerta, que sucede algo, luces, algo.
Kumaja, hichaja, taikaja, amtas tatuka, akapunko, llawirta sukama, hakanaka mantira.
Unjiri, llawiri, usas mamita kanar con kairito. Wantanaga ayinte ukarohpot, ma wanta kira sirita inas chikat wanta ukaman kantok tas kira se mamita con kairito.
Dice que su mamá hace años le contó de que unos músicos, una banda, entró y uno nomás salió, dice, y dice que sabe estar tocando en el interior de esa puerta, se cerró, dice. Esa es siempre así me contaba también a mí mis abuelos antes, y eso es lo que dice que su madre le contó a ella.
¿Cree ella que es una puerta dimensional, un portal, algo así?
Como ya está acá, mancar montaña aquí, Hiwas mantiruka mankar han mistruña aquí. Haniyat. Dice que ella no sabe.
A stargate is simply a doorway between dimensions and between locations. So much in the military funding, so much of the military machine has been to seek out and find the ancient technology and to control the technology of the stargates. The theme that is always expressed to me by those who are familiar with it, have seen them, have even gone through them, is that a sound form, a certain waveform of sound, is used to open the gates.
This place is allegedly a stargate or portal of some kind, a passageway into another dimension. Nobody knows who carved this gate into the rock. Nobody knows who carved it into the rock, and nobody knows why they carved it into the rock. I've spoken with various archaeologists and engineers and some of the village people, and it really is a mystery. Aramumuru is a relatively new name, a new designation for this area. In the years past, it was more commonly known as the Devil's Gate, or the Gate of the Devil, because of some of the strange phenomenon that is alleged to have occurred here. I've heard stories of children walking by and disappearing into the gate, things both coming out and going in, creatures, demons. There are all kinds of stories surrounding this place. There are some ancient legends, some older legends that are that originated with the natives, but most of the legends surrounding this place now are contemporary tales, basically that people have invented after visiting this place. So this is alleged to be the doorway into the Stargate. Legend has it that there used to be a solar disk that could be placed into this indentation here that would activate the gate. Some of the natives here, some of the indigenous people have told us that the gate can also be opened, or has been known to be opened, with music, with vibrations, with sound. There's a lot of legends surrounding this place. A lot of it is hearsay, a lot of it is rumors, a lot of it is just plain BS.
Justo Avenida 2006, un muchacho arequipeño, religión espiritista. Se hace física, mucha física, como gente maleado. Entonces nosotros hemos venido con soja, con palo, y a gente maleado agarramos de ciento. Entonces se entró, se calató. Calato entró, 6 horas se perdió. Después de 6 horas regresaron. Después yo le pregunté acá encima, ¿qué cosa hay adentro? Le dije. Yo sé esa historia, le dije. Entonces me ha dicho, había tenido 2 guardianes, me ha dicho. Ambos lados, uno dice. Ese lugar santo se llama siempre desde antigua. No es cualquiera. Ese es su nombre propio, ya viene Altarane. No es Arama Moro. Entonces un guía que viene por un hotel que se llama el Jorge Luis Delgado, ese se lo ha puesto su nombre Arama Moro. Entonces acá se hace mucha energía. Se hace ceremonia, se gala como emana, dice. Sabiduría, inteligencia, se aumenta esa puerta. No es así nomás. Todo se aumenta, más limpio se van ustedes, entonces se carga energía, después sabiduría se aumenta. No es así nomás. En la puerta que tiene hueco, hay que tocar la cabeza.
Most of the purported phenomena that happens around Aramumuru occurs at night, especially around midnight. So I decided that we needed to camp out in front of the gate if we were going to have any chance of actually getting anything on film. We were told that the Aymara people avoid the area after dark precisely because of the legends describing people disappearing into the gate and demons coming out of it. Some of the young people from the nearby village came out to see what we were doing. Apparently, a group of gringos setting up camp in front of their infamous Stargate was not a particularly common occurrence. Well, it's 8 o'clock at night here at Aramumuru. It's pitch black outside. I'm sitting here in the alleged Stargate doorway. We've been taking readings with our compass. We've been told that sometimes the compasses go haywire around this area. We haven't registered anything yet. Looking for magnetic anomalies, anything like that. But we'll be up till 12, keeping an eye on things.
it's about 12 o'clock at night here outside of the Aramumuru Stargate. And as you can see, we're in the tent. We had to get in the tent and take cover because it started to hail. And basically we got caught in a thunderstorm up here up in the mountains here. And if you look out here, you can see outside of our tent, we got a few inches of hail literally surrounding us here in the tent. And there is, right there, the Aramumuru Gate. So that's how close we are here in our tent. And again, we just got pelted with hail and pretty high winds and thunder and lightning. So we didn't see anything come out of the gate or go into the gate, but it's been interesting.
We got pummeled in that tent. A massive storm erupted in the atmosphere right above our heads. High winds and incredibly violent hail that pelted the fabric of our tent for well over an hour, which is very unusual for hail. We learned later that the storm had been localized right over Aramumuru and the village adjacent to it. In other words, right on top of our tent.
Our film crew went through one of the most remarkable localized focused storms. Even the locals who had to come and push out their vehicle to get out of the mud that had been generated in such a short time marveled at it. But based on the response and the ferocity of that storm that was instantaneous, I would say even the manipulators of the weather wars on planet Earth right now would probably say that was a good shot.
En un futuro cercano, les dirán que los extraterrestres visitaron a la Tierra y enseñaron a los pueblos de la antigüedad la tecnología y la civilización. Pero será una mentira. La verdad es que los ángeles caídos o los ángeles rebeldes descendieron a la tierra en el mundo antediluviano y corrompieron la genética de la vida. Aunque su imperio fue destruido en la ira de Dios y estaban encadenados en la oscuridad eterna, dice la Biblia, vestigios del conocimiento de los vigilantes, su arquitectura, su tecnología, su rebelión y sus genes permanecen en la tierra. When you weigh all of the evidence in the balance, the legends of the natives, the historical accounts of the conquistadors and chroniclers, the advanced megalithic constructions at Pumapunku, the signs of the great flood that buried them, the mind-blowing geoglyphs imprinted on the surface of the earth all over the Altiplano, what you have is undeniable proof of the Genesis 6 narrative and the technology of the fallen. We don't have to conjecture wild speculations about extraterrestrials or equally ridiculous fables concerning primitive cultures with ropes, ramps, and copper chisels in order to make sense of the world around us. All we need to do is to understand and believe what is written in the scriptures, and all the pieces fall into place.
2005, I was actually stationed or deployed to Qatar. It was a completely normal mission for us. We were not alerted for anything abnormal. It was in the middle of the day. I remember coming into a base in Afghanistan called Bagram. Back in those days, it was pretty austere. It was an old Russian air base that we were using. It's basically built in a bowl in the mountains where you have to stay high right up in the last minute, and then you basically come screaming back down to land. The area to the side of it was called the Valley of Death because during the Soviet days with the Mujahideen, they had fired their rockets into a lot of the helicopters, so you could see all kinds of wrecks and stuff in the valley below, which for the most part I didn't pay attention to because I was a little busy getting the airplane on the ground safely. We landed and basically was told to taxi to the very end of the tarmac. And like I said, it was middle of the day, very hot. I remember that. We opened the doors and unloaded the equipment that we had brought in. And then we were met at the aircraft by what we later on called the babysitters. But they kind of introduced themselves and said, hey, no cameras, nobody's taking pictures here. We're moving some high-value stuff. When the load got there, we're very, of course, curious to see what it was, because that's just the way you are when you're told that you're not allowed to have a camera. They say this thing had been dead for maybe a day or two, but it stunk. And when I say stunk, I've smelled dead things before, but this had a more of a, I want to say a musky stink, kind of a, not really a decay, but more of a, if somebody hadn't taken a shower in like 10 years type of a musky stink, is all I can tell you. And it was basically a dead guy, and this guy was extremely large. When I say large, our pallets are basically, if I remember correctly, about 9 by 12 feet or so. This guy was laying in a fetal position on the pallet, so he filled the pallet. We estimated his size at approximately 12 to 10 feet tall. I did see his skin color. I was expecting somebody of more Arabic descent, being in Afghanistan and all. I knew he was dead, but he was very pale, very white. Another thing that us and the rest of the crew did was we took our feet. He was in a fetal position, so you could take your feet and put it kind of, you could see where his feet were there, and they were wrapped up. He did not have shoes on, but he had like looked like he was wrapping them in some kind of a canvas type stuff. But we were sticking our feet up next to his feet, and his feet were extremely big. We know that the standard weight on one of those pallets is about 1,500 pounds, and I do remember that the loadmaster did the weights, and it was around 1,100-pound guy. The pallet sits on dunnage. You know what dunnage is? It's basically like railroad ties so that you can get a forklift underneath it and pick it up. So it was on dunnage, and basic dunnage is like maybe a 4x4. And then the pallet is, say, yay thick. It's actually aluminum and balsa wood. And this guy, I mean, laying down was very, very wide. I mean, and he was, like I said, he's in a fetal position, and you go up and you hit it, and of course he's under a tarp and all that, I understand that, but he was a dense guy. We questioned the babysitters of, hey, where'd you get this guy? And some of the Army guys that were with him relayed to us that this guy had, I guess, been living up in the mountains next to a village where the villagers basically treated him like a god. I did infer that they were making sacrifices to this guy because they said they found bones of people. The giant supposedly, like I said, I was not there, supposedly killed the first team that they came across. He was extremely big and fast and agile for a guy that size. They sent up another team, and when the second team went in there to get him, supposedly he had already started to basically eat on the team that had been killed the first time. They then grabbed a helicopter, and the helicopter brought him down where we picked him up. After we loaded the giant, it was just a standard mission back. We took him all the way back to Al Udeid in Qatar, where he was transloaded onto another airplane. I believe it was a C-17. I was done with my mission then. I got away from it. I was done. I did ask some questions later of, where it might have gone. And as the grapevine goes, it was probably taken back to the United States, and the words I heard were right, Pat. But again, I don't know.
The greatest cover-up in history is the cover-up of history. It's really simple. Those who control the past determine the future. Secret knowledge is the most precious commodity on earth. It's the currency of the occult and the Luciferian elite. Knowledge is power. That's not just a popular expression, it's a fact. Especially knowledge pertaining to the Watchers, their hybrid offspring, and their lost technology. We have discovered that when following the trail of the cover-up relating to the world before the flood of Noah, all roads lead to Rome. The Vatican knows all the secrets.
Where does the seat of ultimate temporal and spiritual power reside? Many believe it is here, in Rome, and specifically in the Vatican. Vatican City occupies an incredibly minuscule piece of real estate, just over 100 acres. It is an entirely independent, sovereign country, complete with its own police force, military contingent, media conglomerate, central bank, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and intelligence agency. Covertly referred to as the entity, the Vatican's infamous intelligence apparatus is widely considered to be the most informed, most penetrating, and most insidious network of espionage in the world. The entity, like a spider, perches atop an incredibly subtle intelligence-gathering web comprised of priestly confessors, holy orders, secret societies, and informants of all stripes, stealthily embedded into every echelon of society. This complex and pervasive nexus collects information from all corners of the earth, even from the most remote locations, and feeds it to the entity at the Vatican. There may be more secrets concealed in the vaults and archives beneath St. Peter's Basilica than in any of the confidential dossiers of every other nation combined. The Holy See has been in the business of intelligence gathering for a very long time. For over 1,000 years, the Church of Rome has been expanding its global reach through military conquest, religious subjugation, and political intrigue, acquiring along the away a vast repository of priceless manuscripts and remarkable artifacts from the dateless past. If knowledge is power, then the Vatican reigns supreme. So what does the Holy See know about giants? Are the bones of giants harbored within the secret passageways and catacombs under the Vatican? We have reason to believe that they are, or at least were at one time.
The popes and the agents of the Holy See have known about the giants for many centuries. In the last episode in this documentary series, we presented historical evidence proving that the bones of giants were recovered in Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia by the Spanish conquistadors and Catholic priests during the conquest and conversion of the Incan Empire in the 15th and 16th centuries. Now, we're not just talking about some random fragments of bones that could have been mistaken for mastodons or giant sloths. Full skeletons and bodies of giants measuring well over 15 feet tall were discovered all over the land. The Inca knew about the giants. In fact, they believed that the massive megaliths found throughout their empire were built by a race of ancient giants before they were destroyed in a great flood. They venerated the hills and the mountains of the countryside because their legends told that the bones of giants could still be found buried within them. And the legends of the Inca were more than myth. On one occasion, the Spaniards discovered that the natives had enshrined the mummified bodies of giants in a cave and were worshiping them as gods. The chroniclers of Peru recorded that the bodies and bones of giants were incinerated by the priests of the Holy See as they labored to extirpate idolatry among the natives. But the records also indicate that not all of the bones were destroyed. Many of them were confiscated and fell into the hands of the Spanish Inquisition. In other words, into the hands of the Church of Rome. What most people don't realize about the Roman Catholic Church is how intensely involved it is in both the reconnaissance and recovery of arcane relics relating to the true narrative of prehistory. So while the rest of the world is being distracted with the convenient fantasy of Darwinism and the evolution of the species, the Vatican is quietly gathering evidence that tells a very different story. For centuries, the agents of the Holy See, especially the Jesuits, have been occupying strategic archaeological locations and seizing critical artifacts all over the earth. Oftentimes, Catholic cathedrals, churches, and monasteries are built right on top of the foundations of ancient pagan temples and secret subterranean caverns or passageways. I was informed years ago by multiple individuals within the intelligence community that when dealing with the antediluvian ruins, what's apparent on the surface is not nearly as significant as what's hidden underground. If a Catholic church is built on top of an ancient temple or some important archaeological site, then the priest can excavate undercover and extract whatever artifacts or bones might be buried there without the general public having any knowledge of their activity. Nowhere is this kind of subterfuge better illustrated than in Cusco, Peru.
Cusco was the capital and center of the Tawantinsuyo, the four regions of the vast Inca Empire, which extended from what is today Colombia all the way down the Pacific coast to Chile and Argentina. Much like Rome, Cusco was both the political and religious power axis of the empire. According to legend, it was renowned founder of the Inca Empire, Manco Capac, who led his people through the Sacred Valley to establish the city of Cusco. The Inca called that land the home of the gods, and for good reason. Although historians almost unanimously attribute these immense megalithic constructions to the Inca themselves admitted to having no memory or record of their building. When Cusco finally fell to Francisco Pizarro and his conquistadors in 1537, the temples of the Inca were razed to the ground, and Catholic cathedrals were erected in their place, right on top of their ruins. The heathen had been slain, and the pagan empire of the Inca conquered by the pious soldiers of the church. It didn't take long for the gilded throne of the Inca king to be transformed into a holy seat of papal power. Priests, nuns, and agents of the Inquisition established their convents in Cusco and began a terrifying campaign to convert the natives still living in the region. The Dominicans were especially influential in the city and built their convent of Santo Domingo right over the ruins of the most important and magnificent Inca palace, called Curicancha, the Temple of the Sun.
Another Catholic church.
Like many ancient cultures around the world, the Inca built their temples and palaces on top of pre-existing foundations left over from the age before the flood. These were considered to be sacred sites imbued with spiritual energy, where the gods of the old world could still be contacted. When the Dominicans built their convent of Santo Domingo over the ruins of the Coricancha, they were taking possession of something far more mysterious and arcane than anything to do with the Inca.
Yeah. So that's where the golden disc was located, right there on that wall.
The temple walls within the Coricancha were constructed with the same mortarless precision that is a trademark of pre-flood Cyclopean masons all over the world.
In the Coricancha, you also have the seamless stones here, no mortar.
The architectural style suggests that the same antediluvian race that built the megalithic constructions at Tiwanaku in Bolivia were also the original builders of these temple walls.
Inside of these walls there are grampas. Grampas is staples or clamps in bronze made. We are going to see some examples of these stone pieces found in 1960s.
Are there blocks from Tiwanaku here in the temple?
Yes, the Tiwanacus arrived to Cusco in order to found it, in order to build this temple in a Tiwanaku style, like a Tiwanaku people. Now this architecture belongs to the Tiwanaku.
This is where they had copper fittings here. This is an example. This is the Tiwanaku architecture.
This one too, This is
Tiwanaku.
Group shapes. This is the clamp. This clamp is a Tiwanaku device.
This is the famous stone where they drilled it. Danny, check this out. This is a famous stone here in La Coricancha, where it appears to have been machine drilled.
The megalithic ruins within the convent of Santo Domingo displayed universal signatures of a technologically superior race that was annihilated long ago in the waters of the Great Flood. The nerve center, where all these tunnels converge, is said to be located underneath the city of Cusco in Peru, the very place known as the navel of the world. The natives called this underground labyrinth beneath Cusco the Chincana, which is a Quechuan word meaning the place where one gets lost. And for good reason, because few of those who have entered into it have ever come out. The Chincana is comprised of naturally occurring, deep subterranean caverns that are joined together by large, artificially constructed tunnels, which are supported in some places by trapezoidal megalithic stone walls and ceilings, just like the doorways in the Temple of the Sun.
The Chincana is essentially a subterranean highway that united many of the most significant antediluvian cities throughout South America with Cusco, and specifically with the megalithic fortress of Sacsayhuaman. We're talking about manufactured tunnels with cyclopean megalithic walls in some segments, running for hundreds of miles under the earth. We know, for example, that the natives told the Spaniards that Cusco was connected with Tiwanaku in Bolivia via the Chincana, which is a distance of over 300 miles. In a sense, the Chincana is the antediluvian equivalent of what we call today DUMBs, deep underground military bases.
What's important to understand about this ancient subterranean highway is how massive of an undertaking it would have been to accurately chart and construct it. And we're not just talking about a single tunnel.
This is a complex maze of interconnecting passageways and deep caverns, which according to legend were filled with all kinds of deadly snares and misdirections, so that only its builders could navigate it successfully.
The Chincana represents an ancient engineering achievement rivaling, if not surpassing, any other megalithic construction on the surface of the earth. There is simply no way that a Bronze Age civilization such as the Inca could have constructed it. Now, they certainly made good use of it, but they didn't build it.
By the time the Spanish conquistadors reached the shores of Peru, the Incan kings had accumulated a vast hoard of gold in Cusco from the four corners of their empire. Much of that gold was used to adorn their temples with sacred artifacts and idols. The most lavish temple of all was the Coricancha, whose name means golden enclosure because its inner walls were covered in sheets of gold. As the Spaniards were approaching Cusco, the greatest treasures of the Inca were carried down into the Chincana through a secret passageway beneath the Coricancha, the entrance to which was sealed up and hidden for generations, until it was discovered by the agents of Rome. After Pizarro's conquistadors had thoroughly sacked and plundered the city of Cusco, the Coricancha was ceded to the Church of Rome's Order of Preachers, the Dominicans, and the convent of Santo Domingo was eventually erected over the ruins of its antediluvian foundations. Much to their displeasure, the Spaniards never found the legendary hoard of Incan treasure hidden in the Chincana and had unknowingly relinquished into the hands of the Dominicans the secret passageway to reach it.
The passageways into the depths of the underground world beneath Cusco were controlled by the Inca elite and were kept secret from the masses on pain of death. The specific segment of the Chincana through which the most valuable artifacts from the temples were carried away before the sacking of the city was a mile-long corridor connecting the Coricancha, now the convent of Santo Domingo, to the fortress of Sacsayhuama. It was in the caverns below Sacsayhuama that the treasure is said to have been deposited. There are only two known entrances into this tunnel. One was located somewhere in the vicinity of Sacsayhuama, and the other was in the Coricancha, presently beneath the church.
We know that the Dominicans discovered the entrance to the Chincana when they built their convent over the ruins of the Coricancha in 1663. And we know that they deliberately kept it a secret. The question is, what have the agents of Rome been plundering from those tunnels all these years?
It is critical to comprehend what the Chincana represents. The sheer scope and magnitude of it implies a level of technology and engineering capability in the prehistoric past that was not supposed to exist until after the advent of the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century.
Just like the evidence for giants all over the earth, the existence of the subterranean highway beneath the Andes in South America has been written off as a fairy tale, even though the historical record is replete with mentions of it.
If the Chincana really exists, then the evolutionary notion that the apex of intelligent life on Earth at the dawn of mankind were apish Neanderthals is utterly shattered.
As much as the archaeological establishment would like to pretend that it's only an old wives' tale, the existence of the Chincana has been proven to be a true legend. In 1982, Spanish researcher and explorer Anselm P. Rambla was taken down into a secret crypt beneath the church of Santo Domingo by the head prior of the time. What he discovered in that crypt would not only confirm that the legend of the Chincana was true, but that the Dominicans had known about it for centuries.
What Anselm P. Rambla saw beneath the Church of the Dominicans in 1982 substantiates my own conjectures regarding the true origins of the megaliths in Peru, Bolivia, and elsewhere in South America. It also validates the idea that the Holy See has enjoyed special access to hidden knowledge and artifacts relating to the pre-flood world for a very long time.
We suspected that the findings of Anselm's investigation in Cusco would dovetail with our own, so we decided to contact him.
Anselm, tell me how your investigation into the Chincana began. What did you see beneath the convent of Santo Domingo in Cusco?
Empezó todo en el 1982 en Cusco, que hacíamos una expedición por todo el Perú. Y cuando llegamos a Cusco, aquella mañana estábamos filmando en Sacsayhuamán y yo decidí con un miembro del equipo ir a ver al prior del convento de Santo Domingo. Dijimos, vamos al Coricancha, al convento de Santo Domingo, y vamos a hablar con el prior si podemos, y hablamos a ver de qué se trata esa leyenda, qué visos de realidad tiene, etcétera, etcétera, ¿no? Y bueno, y nosotros no esperábamos que pasaría lo que después pasó aquella mañana. Llegamos ahí, preguntamos por el prior, lo entrevistamos, nos atendió muy bien y hablamos de la Chincana. Y en el momento aquel dice, sí, esto es cierto, y si ustedes quisieran ver una zona de la iglesia, podemos hacer una investigación esta mañana. O sea, quedamos sorprendidos. Y entramos en un sector de la iglesia en donde había un altar que lo retiramos, un altar de madera movible, lo retiramos. El suelo era de madera y había una trampilla en donde daba acceso a unas escaleras, ¿no? La trampilla nos costó abrirla, pero la abrimos con el prior, mi compañero y yo. Entramos dentro de una cripta totalmente conservada del siglo XVII, y en aquel momento analizamos la cripta y vimos un refundido, como una especie de entrada a la izquierda de la cripta, en donde hacía un pequeño hall, y ahí había una pared de ladrillo rojo que estaba totalmente tapiada, un ladrillo puesto por los dominicos, un ladrillo de obra sencillo. Había unas piedras sueltas y ahí sacamos esas piedras y íbamos con una linterna, pero nosotros no llevábamos en ese momento cámaras ni nada porque estábamos con todo el equipo filmando en Sacsayhuamán y no habíamos previsto esa entrevista con el prior, no pensábamos que no sucedería esto. En aquel momento sacamos los ladrillos, enfocamos detrás de la pared esta y vimos la famosa chincana mencionada por todas las crónicas y tal. Yo personalmente, con mis ojos, pude observar la chincana y es el túnel que une el Coricancha, el antiguo Coricancha, el antiguo templo del sol de los incas, con Sacsayhuamán. En el momento que enfocábamos el túnel, miré paredes, miré techo, miré suelo y el tipo de piedra de construcción era exactamente igual que los templos de arriba del Coricancha. Igual, el mismo corte, tipo de andesita, etcétera, muy bien pulidos, o sea, un corte muy bien pulido por ser un túnel. Y en aquel momento la luz de la linterna se nos perdía dentro del túnel, o sea, era larguísimo, porque claro, estaba negro, no había nada de reflexión. Y en cambio la luz se nos perdía al fondo con una pequeña bruma, o sea, digamos que no pudimos ver el fondo. Después yo le digo al padre, al prior, déjenos derribar el muro, venimos esa tarde con todo mi equipo, derribamos el muro y entramos con las cámaras y filmamos. Y en aquel momento él se negó rotundamente. Dije, mira, no, sé cómo se asustó. Yo pensé que realmente continuaríamos con esto, pero en realidad cambió su tónica, cambió su expresión. Dijo, no voy a permitir que ustedes entren acá, ya hemos visto suficiente. En ese sentido, bueno, pues no pudimos hacer nada más. Él nos confirmó que eso era la chincana, que los dominicos tenían conocimiento de ella desde hacía muchos años, que se había transmitido ese secreto de prior en prior. Aquel tiempo, o sea, digamos, no hicimos nada, ni unos ni otros hicimos nada. Yo tampoco conceptuaba la importancia de la chincana, ni conceptuaba lo que nos había enseñado el prior, o sea, no tenía perspectiva aún de lo que realmente había pasado. Al cabo de un tiempo, de unos años, comprendí que el tema era muy serio y me propuse hacer una investigación y obtener los permisos del gobierno y de la iglesia para hacer una investigación arqueológica detallada y con precisión, ¿no?
In 1999, 17 years after his incredible experience beneath the church, Anselm P. Rambla returned to Cusco with a team of professional investigators to begin an unprecedented excavation inside of the convent of Santo Domingo, seeking entry into the Chincana through the mysterious crypt he had entered so many years earlier. Anselm managed to obtain permission for the excavation from the head prior of the convent, Father Gamarra, who signed an agreement on behalf of the Dominican Order in Cusco, along with representatives of Peru's National Institute of Culture. Father Gamarra even allowed Anselm and his team to photograph for the first time the crowns of the Virgin and the Child, which are Catholic relics forged by the Dominicans from some of the gold from the legendary Incan treasure hoard hidden beneath Sacsayhuamán in the Chincana. Anselm's team scanned the floor of the convent and church with ground-penetrating radar and discovered several colonial-era crypts that had been constructed by the Dominicans throughout the centuries. The team excavated and explored these crypts, but none of them opened to the Chincana. Finally, Anselm located what he believed to be the crypt he had entered in 1982. But to his surprise, the trapdoor had been covered over with tiles, and the crypt itself was now completely filled in with radar blocking debris.
Claro, vimos muchos elementos debajo del Coricancha, pero en realidad donde nosotros estábamos apuntando era en la iglesia, donde estaba la entrada de la Chincana. Pero la iglesia, cuando hicimos el análisis del GPR, nos encontramos con un caos dentro de ese subsuelo, difícil de analizar y poner las cosas en orden, ¿no? Pero la sorpresa más grande fue que donde yo había entrado en el 82 con el prior, de lo que te he explicado antes, en que perfectamente pudimos encontrar la cripta y entrar tan fácilmente, aquella cripta había desaparecido. O sea, el lugar de entrada no existía. Es más, el suelo lo habían cambiado, había mosaico.
It's obvious that the crypt leading to the entrance of the Shinkana beneath the church had been deliberately filled in with debris and covered over with tiles, and that the Dominicans had no intention of letting Anselm reopen it. In fact, when he proposed to do just that, the church officials abruptly terminated the project altogether.
Pero en esa clausura de obras nosotros nos dimos cuenta de un tema muy serio, porque sí que hicimos análisis con el GPR y nos dimos cuenta de que el suelo donde nosotros habíamos entrado en el 82 había sido totalmente alterado. No sabemos la época, yo pienso que es desde la época del 86 al 88, donde ellos mismos alteraron todo el subsuelo de la zona que entramos en el 82.
The superiors of the Dominican order were not happy with Father Gamarra for having approved Anselm's project to find and explore the entrance to the Shinkana beneath the church. After signing the agreement, Father Gamarra was stripped of his title as head prior of the Dominican order in Cusco and basically banished to some small insignificant priory in another town.
A los 30 días de iniciar los trabajos, el padre Gamarra, sin más explicación, no lo vimos más. Y aparece el padre Héctor Herrera, que lo trajeron del norte, y bueno, y se me presenta a mí y me dice: el padre Gamarra ya no está acá y soy el nuevo prior, cualquier cosa tiene que usted hablar conmigo, con las obras y tal, porque no estamos en plenas obras. Cuando nosotros terminamos las obras, que los dominicos nos votaron, nos echaron del Coricancha, o sea, cerraron, clausuraron con el gobierno del Perú las obras, al cabo de una semana, no un mes, al cabo de una semana, el padre Gamarra lo llamaron de Arequipa y lo volvieron a poner de prior. A ver cómo te lo explicas tú eso.
There are, of course, practical reasons why the Dominicans would want to keep the entrance of the Shinkana hidden under their church a secret. We know, for example, that they were concerned about their property being expropriated by the Peruvian government if the truth were to be revealed. But what we're highlighting here is not just a cover-up by one particular order within the Catholic Church. Indeed, the Jesuits also knew about the Shinkana and very likely had access to it, as evidenced in their own cathedral in Cusco, which, just like the convent of Santo Domingo, was constructed right over the ruins of an important Incan temple and is still adorned to this day with Incan gold. The priests of these churches may have had even noble reasons for keeping secret the subterranean world beneath the city. Nevertheless, whatever the reason may be, the overarching conspiracy is indisputable. The Holy See has known about the existence of the Shinkana for centuries, and yet has deliberately chosen to keep it hidden from the masses, and by doing so, has knowingly perpetuated the falsehood that it is a myth.
El padre Gamarra tenía conocimientos de la Shinkana, no sabía él bien dónde estaba ubicada, pero sí tenía la información de los antiguos priores de la existencia de la Shinkana y todo su contexto. O sea, siempre él fue partidario de que la Shinkana se tenía que abrir.
Eventually, Anselm P. Rambla and his team were able to scientifically confirm the existence of a tunnel beneath the church located precisely in the vicinity of the crypt that he had entered in 1982. But instead of being applauded for their historic discovery, the national press vilified them, claiming that they were treasure hunters and imposters who were putting the structural integrity of the church in jeopardy. As a result, the compelling implications of the Shinkana were quietly swept under the rug, literally covered over and covered up.